Hello agents and welcome back to another Division 2 video. In today's video we're going to take a closer look into the Dark Zones in the Division 2. As first impressions go, the community has been divided on what they've seen from the alpha. But today we're going to discuss some of the concerns the community have, why it might not be as bad as first feared, and also look into how the Dark Zone might change in the future. Yeah, that's right, some observations of mine have got me thinking, so they will be worth sticking around for, as I'm going to create some concepts later on in the video of how the Dark Zone, well, could potentially change heading into the Year 2 content. But before we get into that, let's just squash some of the hysteria surrounding what we've seen in the alpha. And believe me, I have many concerns myself, but from the feedback of the guys who have played it, I think overall the feedback has been great. Take Marco Styles for example, he's probably everyone's go-to guy for in-depth and unbiased opinions. So I tend to put a lot of faith into his comments in particular, as he's never deceived the Division community to my knowledge. So my first thoughts going in were smaller DZs, lower capacity servers, fewer landmarks, what's going on? I expected bigger and better, but everything seems to be reduced in size, and not even just slightly, it's been reduced quite a lot. And in fact, apparently the biggest Dark Zone, which is Dark Zone East, is the equivalent to DZ 1 and 3 that we currently have in the Division right now. Now I don't know about you guys, but I like how big our DZ is now. I love how many landmarks there are and how there's also a massive underground system. Things don't get repetitive. If say for instance I've grinded Dark Zone 1 to 5 for a few nights, I can switch things up and go and grind landmarks up in DZ 6 to 9, or even if I've done with farming landmarks, I can go and farm contaminated events, or I can go on a Division Tech run for a few hours. The possibilities are endless, and then we get given the news that they're downsizing the whole thing. From what I've seen from the alpha, it's around 4 to 5 landmarks and maybe 2 to 3 extractions per map. And I don't know about you, but that just makes me feel a little bit claustrophobic just thinking about it. Don't get me wrong, my worries aren't completely squashed, but they have been eased a little just by thinking outside the box. So firstly, what we've got to remember is it's a completely different structured game. I know, shock horror, right? But the problem we face as a community is everybody is comparing the Division 2 with the Division, and that's the first stumbling block. What we've got to remember is gameplay won't pan out the way it does currently. You won't find over-aggressive healing. You also won't find rogues wanting to rush 24 agents, as time to kill has been drastically nerfed. So because of that, it will be in the rogues' best interest to avoid as much conflict as they can, because once those medkits are gone, that's it. So there's a lot of things you're going to have to get used to with the Division 2. And some of those things might take you slightly out of your comfort zone. For instance, there's no pop healing, each medkit takes a few idle seconds to take effect, which I think is a good move. Because let's face it, in real life, if you wanted to bandage up, so to speak, you couldn't just click a button and it'd be done. So mix that in with a few smaller areas, smaller groups and smaller chances to get loot on dedicated servers. Yeah, the gameplay is going to be as cutthroat as ever. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but the point is I personally think I need to play it before I get too disheartened. I do like the idea that the Dark Zone won't be as passive for agents who are just there to extract out the way. And I also like the way that only rare gears need to be extracted, because that will spike interest from surrounding agents and obviously in return create engaging PvP. So on that note, that's obviously got me a bit excited going into the Division 2. But I do think that you could achieve this with bigger Dark Zones and 24 capacity servers. So with that being said, let's take a look on how I think the DZ could expand and where. Before we get started, I just want to say a massive thanks to Wits to let me use his footage from the Dark Zone. And if you want to check out any more raw gameplay footage from the Division 2, his link will be in the description below. And with that being said, let's get into it. So if you guys haven't noticed, all the DZ locations are on the outside edge of the map, leaving suggesting that the Dark Zones could be expanded. And if history tells us anything, massive will more likely expand 1 or 2 areas. With that being said, let's take a look at where they could be expanded, and also take a look at some of the points of interest in those areas of the map. So this is a shot taken from Google Maps, and honestly when I dropped the image of the official Division 2 map over the top to kind of get an idea of the outline of the map, it was literally a perfect scaled match. I was just going to use it for a visual, but ended up tracing over the Division 2 map. So when Massive said that their Division 2 map was going to be to scale, they wasn't joking at all. Firstly, I'll just cross out DZ South, as I don't think it'll make any extensions, and even if it wanted to, I don't think it'd be a great addition. They haven't left too much room for movement here, as the only way they could expand is southeast, and it's just a bunch of motorways. And also I think it'd make a bottleneck choke point that wouldn't be good for a PvP experience, so we just take that out straight away. So let's go and take a look at Dark Zone West Georgetown. Now by no way, shape or form am I saying the DZ will be this big, because it'd actually be bigger than the actual map. But there's some great places of interest in this radius. We've got baseball fields, reservoirs, creeks, hospitals, cathedrals. We've got a naval observatory, but my favourite part in this area has to be the Smithsonian National Zoological Park. In fact, it might just be out of the view of my map, but it's in the top right area, and I think it'd make a great addition to the DZ running around an abandoned zoo. But if we're being realistic, maybe the expansion could be near to this scale. This would include the baseball fields I mentioned, also universities and hospitals, so they'd make a great addition to a DZ. Or there's this, which is where the zoo would be, just out of scale to the northeast. The reason it's not included in the map is because I didn't notice this until I'd finished making the images, so yeah, something along them lines I think would be pretty sweet. So let's move on to the DZ East Capital Station. Here we have a variety of ways Massive could expand, as the surrounding areas are very broad indeed. And the first concept I've come up with is expanding the DZ into this area, and to be honest, this area is probably my favourite concept in the sense of actual map layout, and it would have been my top pick, but there is a point of interest coming up in another concept which for me fits a theory I've wanted implemented in the Dark Zone for years now, so more on that later. But this area has a lot of great buildings and points of interest from schools, churches, hospitals, sports fields and parks. But I think this DZ is really appealing from the great line of sights down the crossroads that run diagonally through the area. And there's plenty of buildings and areas that Massive could implement landmarks and extractions. So yeah, I think in terms of engaging DZ, this layout is probably my favourite. Jumping on to the next concept I've made is headed further northeast. Really brief, nothing to get too excited about, but this area is dominated by sports fields, as you can see in the top right area. I think they're part of a huge university campus, so I thought it was worth a quick mention. But my favourite concept has to be this one, and to be honest it's only for one reason, and that is if you look in the very top right corner, that building is the US Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, which I don't know about you guys, but I think it'd make a great addition to a, well, DZ safe house, especially if it's one of the new Thieves' Den vendors. Incorporating place of interest like they done with Madison Square Garden and Times Square in the Division, I think is a great addition to any game. And this one just fits the billing so much. I think it'd be great if it was heavily guarded by a stronghold of NPCs and hunters, and it had no DZ checkpoints near it. So the only way through was to battle your way through PvE and maybe making it an occupied zone, which would make it that a little bit more worthwhile. And on reaching it you'd get really expensive and rare loot, maybe resetting weekly. This is probably my favourite concept, hence why I've saved it till last. I made a video a while back called 10 things Massive should include in the Division 2. I'll leave a card in the top right corner for you now. One of the topics on there was pointless currency, and I talked about maybe making a really difficult safe house to get weekly spoils would make DZ credits worthwhile. So yeah, this concept is my favourite just for that place of interest alone. I'd like to know what you guys think in the comments below, if you think that would be a great addition to the game, or if anybody's familiar with the places of interest in Washington could suggest how they could be incorporated into the game, let me know below. I love talking concepts and fan theories, so yeah, drop a comment below. And there is actually one more way Massive could extend the Dark Zone which we haven't talked about. If you've noticed, we've got Dark Zone East, West and South, so it would be fitting to make a whole new North Dark Zone. But let's not get too carried away right now, as we can talk about that another time. So when the guys at Massive do decide to open up the Dark Zone, that would mean the capacity would also get a boost. And the only problem we've got is if Massive feel offering a smaller dedicated Dark Zone with stable servers is in their best interests. But I do feel they could do it on a larger scale, so fingers crossed. But that's it for today guys. If you did enjoy today's Division 2 video, don't forget to like to let me know you're enjoying the Division 2 content. Subscribe if you're new, and if you'd like to discuss anything in today's video or your theories on the Dark Zone, please leave a comment down below, as I do look forward to reading them and discussing them with you. And until next time, Agent out.